You know, your Safeway store is a lot more than a pound of hamburger.
The 1970s was a decade when grocery shopping was an experience unlike anything we know today. Walking into your local supermarket meant stepping into a world where everything from the way prices were marked to the ashtrays built into shopping carts was completely different from the sterile automated stores we have now. If you remember pushing a cart down those creaky wooden aisles while your mom collected green stamps, then you'll appreciate these 20 weird facts about 1970s grocery stores that might just surprise you. Fact 1. Green stamps. If you shopped at a grocery store in the 1970s, then you absolutely remember S&H green stamps. These little stamps were given out at the checkout counter based on how much money you spent on groceries. The more you bought, the more stamps you received. And collecting these stamps became almost as important as the groceries themselves. Every grocery store had its own stamp program, but S&H green stamps were the most popular. You'd get a certain number of stamps for every dollar you spent, and the cashier would hand them to you, along with your receipt. Most families had dedicated stamp books at home, where they'd carefully paste each stamp into the designated squares. It was a ritual that happened after every shopping trip. The whole point of collecting these stamps was to redeem them for prizes. S&H operated redemption centers, where you could exchange your filled stamp books for everything from toasters and blenders to furniture and toys. Kids would flip through the redemption catalogs, dreaming about what they could get if their family saved enough stamps. Some families saved stamps for years, trying to accumulate enough for bigger ticket items like televisions or lawnmowers. What made the green stamp system weird by today's standards was just how much effort went into it. You'd spend time at home licking stamps and pasting them into books. Then you'd have to drive to a redemption center to actually get your prize. It was like a second job just to get a discount on household items. But back in the 70s, this was just what you did, and families took their stamp. Collecting seriously, some people even traded stamps with neighbors to complete their books faster. The green stamp phenomenon was so popular that it became ingrained in grocery shopping culture. And when stores eventually phased them out in favor of other loyalty programs, it marked the end of an era. Fact 2. Price stickers on everything. Walking into a 1970s grocery store, you'd immediately notice something different about the products on the shelves. Every single item had a price sticker on it. This wasn't just for convenience, it was absolutely necessary, because there were no barcodes and no computerized inventory systems. Every can, every box, every package had to be individually marked with its price. Store employees would spend hours using pricing guns to mark merchandise. These handheld devices would print out small stickers with the price and sometimes the department code, and workers would go up and down the aisles, attaching these stickers to products. One by one, it was tedious work, and it had to be done constantly whenever prices changed, which happened frequently due to inflation. In the 70s, all those stickers had to be replaced. The pricing system created its own set of problems. Sometimes stickers would fall off, leaving customers and cashiers confused about how much something cost. Other times, customers would peel stickers off expensive items and put them on cheaper ones, hoping to get a discount at checkout stores. Tried to combat this by making the stickers harder to remove, but that just meant you'd struggle to peel them off when you got home. Kids quickly figured out that they could create their own discount system by switching price stickers. Some would take the sticker from a can of store-brand vegetables and put it on a more expensive name brand item. Most of the time, cashiers caught these switchers, but occasionally someone would make it through the checkout line with their pricing scam. Successful. Of course, this was technically theft, but in the 70s, security wasn't nearly as tight as it is today. The lack of barcodes also meant that cashiers had to manually enter every price into the register by hand. This required them to either memorize hundreds of prices or constantly check the stickers. Good cashiers could ring up a full cart of groceries without looking at a single sticker because they had memorized the price of every common item in the store. It was a skill that took years to develop, and experienced checkers were valued employees who could process customers much faster than newcomers. Fact 3. The butcher counter. One of the most memorable features of 1970s grocery stores was the butcher counter. This wasn't just a display case with pre-packaged meat. Like you see today, it was a full-service operation with an actual butcher working behind the counter who would cut your meat to order. You'd walk up, tell the butcher exactly what you wanted, and he'd prepare it right in front of you. The butcher knew his customers by name, and he knew their preferences. Some people wanted their pork chops cut thick, others wanted them thin. The butcher would customize every order, and he took pride in his work. These weren't just meat cutters. They were skilled craftsmen who had trained for years to perfect their trade. They could break down an entire side of beef and knew every cut inside and out. Behind the counter, you'd often see the butcher working with massive cuts of meat using bandsaws and cleavers to portion everything out. The whole operation was visible to customers, which built trust. You could see exactly where your meat was coming from and how fresh it was. There was no mystery about what you were buying, and if you had questions, the butcher would answer them. The floor around the butcher counter often had sawdust spread across it. This served multiple purposes it absorbed. Blood and other liquids that dripped from the meat. It made the floor less slippery, and it gave the area a traditional feel that customers associated with quality butcher shops. The sawdust would get swept up and replaced regularly, but it was always there, adding to the atmosphere. What made the butcher counter weird by today's standards was the level of personal service you'd receive. You could ask for special cuts, request that fat be trimmed a certain way, or even ask the butcher for cooking advice. This kind of interaction is almost completely gone from modern grocery stores, where meat comes pre-packaged and there's rarely anyone around to ask questions. The butcher counter represented a time when grocery shopping involved more human interaction and less efficiency. But most people who remember it will tell you the meat was better, and the experience was far more satisfying than grabbing a plastic-wrapped package from a refrigerated case. Fact 4. Cigarette vending machines. It might seem unbelievable today, but many grocery stores in the 1970s had cigarette vending machines right inside the store, usually near the entrance or by the checkout lanes. These machines allowed anyone with enough coins to buy a pack of cigarettes. No questions asked, no age verification, no ID required. Just insert your money, press a button, and out came your cigarettes. The machines themselves were pretty simple. They had rows of buttons, each one featuring a different brand of cigarettes. Marlboro, Winston-Salem, Cool, Virginia Slims. All the popular brands were represented, and the prices were clearly marked, usually somewhere between 50 cents and $1 for a pack. You'd insert your coins. The machine would make a mechanical clicking sound, and then a pack of cigarettes would drop down into the retrieval slot. What's crazy looking back is that there was absolutely nothing stopping kids from using these machines. If you had the money, you could buy cigarettes. Nobody monitored the machines, and nobody questioned why a 12-year-old might be buying a pack of Camels. Some kids would pool their money together and take turns buying cigarettes from the vending machine, right there in the grocery store where their parents were shopping. The cigarette companies loved these vending machines because they made their products easily accessible, and the impulse purchase factor was high. Someone might not have planned to buy cigarettes, but seeing the machine right there would trigger a craving, and they'd make a purchase. Stores liked them too, because they required almost no maintenance and generated additional revenue without any labor costs. Eventually, concerns about minors accessing cigarettes led to regulations, and most stores removed their vending machines by the early 1980s, but throughout the 70s they were a common sight, and nobody thought twice about having them in a family grocery store. It was just another example of how different attitudes about smoking were back then, when cigarettes were advertised on television, sold from vending machines, and generally treated as just another consumer product, rather than the health hazard we recognize them as today. Fact 5. Shopping carts with ashtrays. If cigarette vending machines and grocery stores weren't weird enough, Many shopping carts in the 1970s actually came equipped with built-in ashtrays. These were small metal or plastic receptacles attached to the handle of the cart, specifically designed so shoppers could smoke cigarettes while they pushed their carts up and down the aisles doing their weekly shopping. The concept seems absolutely insane by modern standards, but in the 70s, it made perfect sense to store owners and customers alike. Smoking was permitted almost everywhere, and grocery stores were no exception. People smoked in restaurants and airplanes and hospitals and, yes, in grocery stores. So, why not make it convenient for them by adding ashtrays to the shopping carts? You'd see shoppers casually puffing away on cigarettes as they browsed the produce section or compared prices on canned goods. The ashtrays would fill up with butts and ashes throughout the shopping trip, and stock boys would have to empty them out regularly along with their other duties. It was just another part of keeping the store clean and maintaining the shopping carts. The presence of smoking in grocery stores created situations that would be unthinkable today. Imagine someone smoking next to the fresh vegetables or near the bakery section where bread was being baked. But in the 70s, this was completely normal behavior. Nobody complained about secondhand smoke because the concept wasn't really understood yet, or at least wasn't taken seriously. What's particularly strange is that even with ashtrays built into the carts, people still sometimes dropped cigarette butts on the floor or left them burning in the ashtrays when they returned their carts. This created fire hazards and extra cleanup work for employees, but stores continue to provide the ashtrays because the alternative, having people complain about not being able to smoke, was worse from a business perspective. The shopping cart ashtrays gradually disappeared throughout the late 70s and early 80s as smoking regulations became more common and public awareness of the health risks increased. But for anyone who shopped in the early to mid-70s, these ashtrays were just a normal part of the grocery shopping experience. They represent a time when smoking was so ingrained in American culture that it infiltrated every aspect of daily life, including something as routine as buying groceries. Fact 6. No express lanes. When you walked into a 1970s grocery store and headed to the checkout, you'd notice something missing. There were no express lanes. Every checkout line was the same, whether you had 2 items or 200 items. You waited in the same line as everyone else, and the person in front of you with a completely full cart had just as much right to be there as you did. This created some interesting dynamics at the checkout. People with just a few items would try to strategically pick the shortest line, but there was no guarantee that line would move quickly, because the person at the front might have a cart full of groceries and be paying by check, which required additional time for verification and processing. You'd stand there watching other lines move faster and wonder if you should switch, but by then, you'd already invested time in your current line. The absence of express lanes meant that shopping for just a few items could take just as long as shopping for a full week's worth of groceries. There was no quick in and out option. If you needed to grab milk and bread, you might still spend 20 minutes waiting in line behind people with overflowing carts. This was just accepted as part of grocery shopping. Nobody expected it to be fast. Cashiers in the 70s were judged primarily on their speed and accuracy. The fastest checkers got the most respect, and regular customers would specifically choose their lines because they knew those cashiers could move people through quickly. Some checkers became almost famous in their stores for their ability to ring up items and bag groceries with incredible efficiency. The introduction of express lanes later in the decade and into the 80s changed grocery shopping significantly. Suddenly, people with just a few items had an option, and the pressure on everyone to shop efficiently increased. But in the early 70s, you just accepted that grocery shopping would take time, and you'd better bring patience because you were going to need it. Standing in those long lines gave people time to chat with the neighbors, flip through magazines at the rack near the register, or just zone out and think about what they'd make for dinner that night. Fact 7. Paper or paper. At the checkout counter in 1970s, grocery stores, you'd hear a question that sounds strange by today's standards. Paper or paper? That's because plastic bags didn't exist yet. At least not in grocery stores. Every single bag was made of paper, usually brown craft, paper that could hold a decent amount of weight, but would occasionally split if overloaded. The paper bags came in different sizes, and the bag boy, or sometimes the cashier, would pack your groceries with surprising skill. They knew that canned goods went on the bottom, bread and eggs went on top, and you never mixed cleaning products with food items. It was an art form, and experienced bag boys took pride in being able to pack a cart full of groceries into the minimum number of bags, without anything getting crushed. Bag boys were an essential part of the grocery store staff in the 70s, and many stores offered carry-out service where the bag boy would wheel your cart out to your car and load the bags into your trunk for you. This was particularly helpful for elderly customers, or anyone with a large order. You'd pull up to the front of the store, and the bag boy would come out and help you load everything up. Sometimes they'd work for tips, but often this service was just included as part of shopping at that store. The paper bags themselves were sturdy, but they had limitations. If it was raining, your bags could get wet and fall apart. You'd have to make multiple trips from your car to your house because the bags weren't as strong as plastic. And you could only carry a couple at a time, and if you bought anything with sharp edges, it could poke right through the paper, leaving you with a potential disaster. Despite these limitations, paper bags were the only option, and people made them work. Many families reused their paper bags as lunch bags, or for storing things around the house. Some people even decorated them and used them as book covers for school textbooks. The bags were biodegradable, which meant they didn't contribute to long-term pollution, though nobody really thought about that in the 70s. The introduction of plastic bags in the late 70s and early 80s was initially seen as a huge improvement. They were stronger, more water-resistant, and had handles that made them easier to carry. But over time, people began to realize the environmental cost of plastic bags, and many have returned to preferring paper, or bringing their own reusable bags, a full circle moment that shows how sometimes the old ways weren't so bad, after all. Fact 8. The trading stamp licking. If your family collected trading stamps in the 1970s, then you definitely remember the ritual of stamp licking. This was the process of taking all those stamps you received at the checkout counter and pasting them into your stamp collection book, and it required licking each individual stamp to activate the adhesive on the back. The stamps came in perforated sheets, and you'd carefully tear off each stamp before licking it and placing it in the designated square. In your book, some families made this a group activity, sitting around the kitchen table after dinner, with everyone taking turns licking stamps and filling pages. It became a bonding experience, though not always a pleasant one. The taste of the stamp adhesive was distinctive, and not in a good way. It had a slightly bitter chemical flavor that would make your tongue feel numb after licking too many stamps. Some people would use a damp sponge instead of licking to avoid the taste, but that seemed to defeat the purpose somehow. Licking was faster and more direct, even if it meant dealing with an unpleasant taste and a tingling tongue. Kids were often recruited for stamp licking duty because they had more saliva and more patience for the tedious task. You'd sit there for what felt like hours licking and sticking stamps until your tongue was completely numb and you couldn't taste anything anymore. It was a weird form of child labor that everyone just accepted as normal. The dedication families showed to collecting these stamps was remarkable. People would choose which grocery store to shop at basis solely on what stamp program they offered. Some families were loyal S&H green stamp collectors, while others preferred plaid stamps or top value stamps. Switching stores meant starting a new collection, so loyalty was important. Looking back, the whole concept seems bizarre. We were essentially working for free to earn prizes that we could have just bought with the money we spent on groceries. But the psychology of collecting and earning rewards was powerful, and the stamp programs were incredibly successful for decades before finally fading away as stores moved toward more modern loyalty programs that didn't require any licking. Fact 9. Wooden floors. Walking into a 1970s grocery store meant walking across wooden floors that creaked and groaned with every step. These weren't the polished hardwood floors you might find in a fancy store. Today they were practical working floors made of wide planks that had seen years of use and showed every bit of it. The wooden floors were usually covered with a layer of sawdust, particularly around the butcher counter and produce sections. This sawdust served multiple purposes. It absorbed spills and drips. It made the floors less slippery, and it gave the store a traditional market atmosphere that customers found comforting. The smell of sawdust, mixed with the other store smells, created a unique olfactory experience that anyone who shopped in those stores will never forget. As you pushed your cart down the aisles, the wheels would make different sounds, depending on which boards you were rolling over. Some sections of floor were squeakier than others, and regular customers knew which areas to avoid if they wanted a quieter shopping experience. Kids loved running up and down the aisles specifically to make the floors creak as loudly as possible, much to their parents' annoyance. The wooden floors required constant maintenance. Store employees would sweep multiple times throughout the day to keep the sawdust from building up too much, and to clear away any debris. Periodically, the floors would need to be sanded down and refinished, but for the most part, they were just kept clean and functional rather than beautiful. What made these wooden floors weird by today's standards is how different they were from the sterile vinyl or tile floors in modern supermarkets. The wood gave stores character and warmth, but it was also less hygienic and harder to keep. Clean spills would soak into the wood if not cleaned up immediately, and over time the floors would develop stains and dark patches that no amount of cleaning could remove. The transition to vinyl and tile flooring happened gradually throughout the late 70s and 80s as stores modernized and health codes became stricter. But for anyone who remembers shopping on those old wooden floors, there's a certain nostalgia for the way they made grocery stores feel less like corporate retail spaces and more like neighborhood markets where you knew the employees and felt at home. Fact 10. No organic section. In the 1970s, walking into a grocery store looking for organic or health-focused foods would have been a disappointment. Mainstream supermarkets didn't carry organic produce, hormone-free meat, or specialty health items. Everything was just regular food. There were no labels, no organic sections, no free-range eggs or grass-fed beef. Shoppers didn't question how their food was grown or raised. The produce section offered only basic fruits and vegetables, and washing them at home was considered sufficient. The meat counter sold cuts based on price and type, not farming methods or animal welfare. Specialty items like brown rice or whole grain products were rare, and often only found in separate health food stores, which were seen as niche or hippie establishments. Shopping was simpler, with fewer choices and faster decisions. Cultural attitudes prioritized convenience and affordability over nutrition or environmental impact. TV dinners and processed foods were viewed as modern innovations. People generally didn't think about pesticides or industrial farming. It wasn't until the 80s and 90s that health consciousness and organic options became mainstream, making the 70s grocery experience seem surprisingly basic in retrospect. Fact 11. Layaway for groceries. In many 1970s, grocery stores, especially small neighborhood markets, you could buy groceries on credit. The store would keep a tab for regular customers, and you'd pay later, at the end of the week or after payday. This system relied on trust between store owners and customers, something hard to imagine today. Here's how it worked. You shopped, and instead of paying immediately, the cashier recorded what you owed in a ledger under your name. You'd take your groceries home and settle the bill later. Some stores even let tabs run for weeks if they trusted you to pay. This was a lifeline for families living paycheck to paycheck, helping them manage high inflation and tight budgets. Store owners knew their customers personally and could adjust credit based on circumstances, offering flexibility or support when needed. Problems arose when people couldn't pay, forcing awkward social decisions about debt. As chain stores expanded and credit cards became common, the tab system disappeared, taking with it the personal connections and community trust that had defined neighborhood grocery shopping. It's remembered fondly as a bygone era of human connection and commerce. Fact 12. The Muzak. The moment you entered a 1970s grocery store, Muzak greeted you, a continuous stream of bland instrumental music that played throughout the day. These weren't the pop hits or curated playlists of today, but stripped-down versions of familiar songs designed to fade into the background. The idea was to create a pleasant shopping environment without distracting customers, subtly influencing their behavior. Upbeat tempos encouraged movement during busy periods, while slower arrangements eased the pace when the store was quiet. The volume was carefully set, loud enough to hear, but not so loud that it interfered with conversations or announcements. Familiar songs like Beatles or Motown hits sounded strange and unrecognizable, their vocals replaced by strings and woodwinds. Some shoppers found it soothing, others maddening, especially knowing the music was manipulative, designed to make people spend more without realizing it. Employees endured it for 8-hour shifts, trying to tune out the repetitive tracks that never stopped. Muzak wasn't limited to grocery stores. It permeated elevators, offices, and malls. Though modern stores now play recorded music, anyone who shopped in 70s supermarkets remembers that distinctive instrumental background soundtrack. Fact 13. Cereal box prizes. One of the most thrilling parts of grocery shopping in the 1970s for kids was the cereal aisle, because inside those colorful boxes were actual prizes. Plastic toys, games, comic books, records, or even science experiments. Buying cereal wasn't just about breakfast, it was a treasure hunt. Some cereals had different prizes in each box, so you never knew what you'd get until opening it, creating endless excitement and competition among kids. The craze also created unusual behavior in stores. Kids would peek into boxes right on the aisle, or sometimes try to remove prizes without paying, forcing employees to regularly check for tampered boxes. Some clever children even developed methods to peek inside and reseal the box so it looked untouched. Families often bought multiple boxes to collect entire sets, and kids traded duplicates with friends, forming a miniature economy around cereal prizes. These prizes weren't cheap trinkets. They were carefully designed toys meant to provide hours of fun. While the practice faded in later decades due to costs and safety rules, the 70s cereal aisle was a hub of excitement, mischief, and anticipation for every child who shopped there. Fact 14. No scanners. Checking out at a 1970s grocery store was a completely manual process. There were no barcode scanners or computerized registers. Cashiers had to enter every single price by hand, relying on either memorization or constant reference to price stickers. Experienced cashiers were like human computers, memorizing hundreds of common prices and ringing up full carts with remarkable speed and accuracy, while mentally calculating the running total. The mechanical registers added to the experience. Each keystroke produced a satisfying ka-ching sound, and numbers appeared in a small window, letting customers see the transaction in real time. Mistakes were common though. Misread or mistyped prices often went unnoticed until the receipt was checked. Inventory management was also entirely manual, requiring store managers to physically count items, which sometimes led to popular products being out of stock for days. Despite the challenges, skilled cashiers were highly valued. Their speed and precision were impressive, and customers trusted their expertise. The introduction of barcode scanners in the late 70s and early 80s improved efficiency but eliminated the artistry of human skill, replacing memorization and intuition with automation. Fact 15. Saturday crowds. In the 1970s, Saturday mornings were the busiest time at grocery stores. Families did their weekly shopping then, and the stores were packed. Parking lots were full, aisles crowded, and checkout lines could stretch back into the store, making shoppers wait 30 to 45 minutes or more. It was chaos, but everyone expected it. Weekly shopping was a family affair. Dad would drive, Mom managed the carefully planned grocery list, and kids tagged along to help push carts or occasionally get in the way. Meal planning was serious business, with lists organized by aisle to make navigating the store more efficient. The parking lot was its own challenge, with families circling for spots, blocking traffic, and jockeying for the best place to unload groceries. Inside, patience was essential. Shoppers navigated jammed aisles, waited behind slow-moving carts, and sometimes asked strangers to move. Despite the long waits and crowded conditions, Saturday shopping had a communal feel. It was a shared ritual where everyone endured the chaos together, and surviving the morning was part of the experience of family life in the 70s. Fact 16: glass milk bottles. In the 1970s, milk still came in glass bottles at many stores. These weren't the plastic jugs or cardboard cartons we're familiar with today. They were heavy glass bottles with cardboard caps that you'd return to the store after use for a small deposit refund. This system was a holdover from the days of home milk delivery, but it persisted in grocery stores well into the 70s. The glass bottles held either a quart or a half-gallon of milk, and they were heavy, especially when carrying multiple bottles from your car to your house required some strength and coordination. The glass was thick to prevent breakage, but drops and accidents still happened, leaving a mess of milk and broken glass that had to be carefully cleaned up. The deposit system meant you'd pay an extra amount when you bought the milk, usually around 25 cents per bottle, and you'd get that money back when you returned. The empty bottle stores had designated areas where you'd drop off your empties, usually near the entrance, so you could return them before you started your shopping. This return process had its own quirks. Bottles needed to be rinsed out before being returned, but some people didn't bother bringing in bottles that still had sour milk residue in them. The collection areas could develop quite an unpleasant smell, especially in summer. Stores had to regularly clean and organize these return stations to keep them from becoming disgusting. The whole system was connected to the declining practice of home milk delivery. In the early 70s, many families still had milk delivered to their doorstep by a milkman, who would pick up empty bottles and leave full ones. This service was gradually disappearing as supermarkets became the primary source for dairy products. But the bottle deposit system kept the tradition alive a bit longer. What made glass bottles weird was the disconnect between modern convenience and old-fashioned practices. Here you were shopping in a supermarket with shopping carts and automatic doors, but you were buying milk in glass bottles and returning them for deposits just like your grandparents had done decades earlier. It was a liminal space between eras. The transition to plastic jugs and waxed cardboard cartons happened gradually throughout the late 70s. Plastic was cheaper, lighter, and didn't require a return system, which made it more convenient for both stores and customers. But some people missed the glass bottles, which kept milk colder and didn't impart any flavor the way some early plastic containers did. The deposit system was good for the environment too, encouraging reuse at a time when most people weren't thinking about such things. Fact 17: meat wrapped in paper. In the 1970s, buying meat at the grocery store was a very different experience than today. Meat came wrapped in thick white butcher paper, not pre-packaged on styrofoam trays with plastic wrap. The butcher would cut your order, wrap it tightly in paper, and seal it with tape. The paper had a waxy coating meant to prevent leaks, but it didn't always succeed. Because the meat was hidden, you had to trust the butcher to give you exactly what you requested. Sometimes you'd get home only to find pork chops cut thinner than expected, or extra fat you hadn't anticipated. Leaks were common, especially on hot days or during long trips home, soaking the bottom of grocery bags and ruining other items. Many shoppers learned to ask for double wrapping or separate bags, and some even brought containers from home for extra protection. Another challenge was timing. Butcher paper provided no sell-by or expiration date, so meat had to be cooked within a day or two or frozen immediately. Despite these inconveniences, many preferred butcher paper because it offered a personal touch, allowed for customization, and connected shoppers with the traditional art of meat cutting, a level of service largely lost with pre-packaged meat. Fact 18. Store hours. In the 1970s, grocery stores operated on far more limited schedules than today. Most stores closed completely on Sundays and shut their doors by 6 or 7 in the evening on weekdays. Late-night shopping or 24-hour stores were unheard of. Sunday closings were often enforced by blue laws, which prohibited retail businesses from operating for religious observance. Forget something on Saturday, you'd have to wait until Monday morning. Limited hours meant shoppers had to plan carefully. If you worked a 9-to-5 job, trips had to be squeezed in during evenings or on Saturday. 15 minutes before closing, store PA systems would announce that shoppers needed to finish and head to checkout, and employees would politely guide stragglers to the registers. These hours reflected a cultural emphasis on family time and work-life balance. Sundays were for rest, and evenings marked the end of the workday for employees. When stores began extending hours in the late 70s and early 80s, it offered convenience but also signaled the shift toward an always-on consumer culture, changing the rhythm of shopping forever. Fact 19. The suggestion box. In the 1970s, most grocery stores had a suggestion box mounted near the exit or customer service counter. These simple wooden or metal boxes with a slot on top allowed customers to drop in written comments, complaints, or ideas, a direct line to store management. Unlike today's anonymous online reviews, these notes were often signed, creating a personal connection between shoppers and store staff. Managers would regularly collect and review the submissions, sometimes posting responses on bulletin boards to address common suggestions or explain why requests couldn't be fulfilled. This created a rare two-way dialogue that made shoppers feel heard. Kids especially loved the boxes, often writing requests for specific candies or cereals, while some submitted playful or outrageous ideas just for fun. Humorous managers occasionally responded in kind, adding to the charm. The suggestion box offers a fascinating glimpse into 70s grocery culture, from product requests and complaints about out-of-stock items to ideas about store layout or employee uniforms. It was a quaint, local, and surprisingly effective way for communities to engage with their stores, a level of accountability and connection that's mostly disappeared in modern retail. Fact 20. Trading stamps programs. In the 1970s, trading stamp programs were a major part of grocery shopping, and S&H green stamps were just the most famous of many. Competing programs like plaid stamps, top value stamps, gold bond stamps, and numerous regional options offered shoppers the chance to earn rewards while shopping. Each program had its own colorful stamps, books, and redemption catalogs, and families often chose where to shop based on which stamps were offered. The competition between stamp programs was intense. Stores frequently switched from one program to another to attract customers, forcing loyal shoppers to decide whether to abandon their partially filled books or change stores. Some shoppers collected multiple stamp programs simultaneously, keeping careful track of several books at once to maximize rewards. The stamp's value wasn't just practical, families invested, emotionally debating which program was best, trading stamps with friends, and feeling real disappointment if a favorite store switched companies. Catalogs showcased a wide variety of prizes, from kitchen gadgets to major appliances and furniture, and families would spend hours planning which rewards to save for. Trading stamps encourage patience, loyalty, and even family bonding, creating a quirky culture around grocery shopping that feels completely foreign today, but was a cherished part of everyday life. Looking back at 1970s grocery stores, it's amazing how different the experience was from today. Stores had creaky wooden floors, ashtrays on shopping carts, and friendly butchers who knew your name. You collected trading stamps, waited patiently in long lines, and accepted that sometimes you couldn't get everything in one trip. Shopping required patience, personal interaction, and time, qualities largely absent in today's barcode-scanned, 24-hour, convenience-driven stores. Neighborhood stores were community hubs. You ran into neighbors, employees recognized regulars, and the shopping trip was as much social as practical. While modern stores bring speed, accuracy, and variety, including organic and specialty items, something was lost. Personal connection, slower pacing, and shared experience. From the smell of sawdust to the thrill of finding a cereal box prize, the 70s grocery store shaped a generation. Today, as we scan items at self-checkout or order online, it's worth remembering the quirks, patience, and community spirit of a shopping era that will never return.